Hello, you lovely listeners. I'm Amy. Welcome to the Really Good Conversations podcast, where we will delve into the minds of the business people we have met in the process of launching our first card game. We will be uncovering their secrets to success, their biggest mistakes, and sharing the key lessons they have picked up en route. So, if you're looking for an engaging chinwag mixed with business insights and a good pinch of fun, you're in the right place. Let's have a really good conversation. Welcome to the Really Good Conversations podcast. Today, I'm joined by Ning Cheah, who is the founder of The Beauty Crop, a plant-based beauty brand that Ning launched in 2014 and has scaled into a £1 million success after leaving her career in investment banking. Welcome to the podcast, Ning.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, Amy.
You're very welcome. And I am so looking forward to having this conversation and hearing about your journey over, the last sort of 10 years or so with the Beauty Crop. Can you tell us first, let's go back to, you were in a completely different industry, in finance. What sparked your decision to leave investment banking and launch a beauty brand from scratch?
Well, to be honest, I didn't think my passion in life was banking, to be fair, because I kind of fell into it after graduating. So I graduated as a chemical engineer, but went into banking because I was recruited as a financial engineer, and I was doing lots of really stuff, which caused actually the demise of the bank that I was working with at that time was Lehman Brothers. I was doing structured finance, so really esoteric stuff. And actually, during my time there, I'm very thankful. Don't get me wrong. I'm very thankful for my time there. But, you get through life and you're just thinking, this isn't what I'm meant to do with my life. I wasn't very happy. My skin was breaking out. I was stressed. I missed lots of, life experiences like birthdays, weddings of friends. And it was just all consuming. I was doing, 100 hours per week, 120 hours per week, which was just absolutely mad. And I think, from there, I always wanted to do something entrepreneurial, but I just did not know what it was going to be. And it actually, because my skin was so bad at that time, I have, and I still do, very bad eczema. I have atopic eczema. And then coupled with that really stressful lifestyle, not eating well, not working out, just stress constantly. I developed cystic acne. So I couldn't put anything on my face because especially colored cosmetics, because there was a lot of fragrance or there were just ingredients that just seemed to cause lots of irritation to my skin. So the idea sparked during that period because I was constantly looking at labels and turning products around and reading the ingredients. And I thought that there was a gap in the market for better formulated color cosmetics primarily. And I still had my job at banking, and I decided that I was just going to fund it with my income. And I think from there, I never looked back.
Wow. It's always fascinating what is that seed for an entrepreneur or, particularly a product-based business idea to start and where that comes from. And it often is that personal need or personal challenge that someone is facing. But talk us through that. I said you started it when you were still working in your job, but at what point did you make that leap to think, right, I'm going to fully proceed with this? And did you have any fears about that, about leaving the banking world?
Absolutely. They call it golden handcuffs for a reason, because the job paid so well and you're accustomed to a certain lifestyle. You've got the rent to pay, and quite honestly, that was scary enough, but I was so unhappy. I was just dreading Monday mornings. I don't know if you get that fear, the fear, that roller coaster feeling.
I've had it. I used to go Shmonday. So it's on
Well,
the Sunday when you start thinking about Monday. It's
oh, yeah.
Monday.
I was so miserable, and I just could not face waking up every morning. It was so stressful. It was, where I was, the culture was bad. There was obviously some level of sexism. It's very
Mm,
macho environment. I think I was one or two of us are the only women in the team, and uh, yeah, I was just not very happy. And I think starting my own business, as scary as that was better than my current situation.
mm,
So it was do or die, really. Honestly, I just was so unhappy, and I wanted to look at other alternatives. And actually, I started my business as a side hustle. So
mm,
I started a business, I quit my job in banking, and then I joined a fintech, which is somewhat related to finance, but it was a more entrepreneurial sort of venture. It was a
mm,
startup business. So I thought that was a really good training ground because, coming from a large corporate, you're obviously used to, working certain ways, but that 1 year in that fintech startup really helped me develop into a founder and
mm.
helped me with processes, using Google Drive instead of Microsoft, or even using Slack to communicate when you are working from home, or, those sort of concepts were so alien at that time. And yeah, and I also realized what I didn't want to do as a startup, which was to be so reliant on investors. I wanted to
Yeah.
bootstrap my business. I would advise if anyone wants to start a business, do it as a side hustle and then prove out the concept from there.
And how do you think your finance background either helped or hindered you in those early days? Because there's a reality, and we've been through this ourselves, when you are bootstrapping it yourself, you are now spending your own money, which can be worrying at the same time. It's not really like a client's project where there's a budget and you think, great, I can allocate that to that to that. But yeah, how do you think your finance knowledge and background helped or hindered those early years when you were getting going?
Yeah, so I think number one, I think it helped in the sense of my background in finance helped me sort of develop the business plan. So,
Mm,
forecasting and margins and making sure that we stayed profitable. So I guess from my experience previously, I was helping other companies to do that. So budgeting and forecasting the financials. But
mm,
obviously, you can focus all you want. The reality is you need to make it happen when it's your own business. And I guess the other side of it was from my finance background, I was able to save quite a bit. So I was able to bootstrap the business. I think all in all, from the early days in the initial years, yeah, I think I used about 200,000 of my own money and
mm.
didn't have to rely on outside investment. But yeah, it is tough. I'm 10
Yeah.
years in, and I'm constantly feeling, I definitely am not, rich or I am financially independent, but I think as a business owner, you're always worrying about the next 6 months, the next 12
Mm.
months.
And there's a lot of moving parts in business and from manufacturing, supply chain, delivery, customers, again, obviously the things like the website itself and e-commerce, and there's so many different moving parts that you can control or try to control as many of these as possible. But I think, yeah, the reality is so somewhere there some problem will appear that you weren't expecting or planned for.
Absolutely, yeah. I think, you can plan it to the nth degree and nothing ever goes to plan. And also, we're a consumer goods business, and the larger you grow, the more cash you need to
Mm,
buy products. So it's not like we're a tech company where the initial investment is what fuels the company. And, once you get to a critical mass, you don't actually need to spend so much more because it's just
yeah, of
startup costs.
course.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is an interesting insight for sure. And we think about how you've scaled the business over the years as a solo founder. What do you think were some of those early strategic decisions that you think did significantly influence your growth?
Yeah, I would say being really clear about the problem you're trying to solve
Mm,
helped us in the early years, because I think we wanted to really be able to carve out a niche for ourselves. We are skincare meets makeup, and I didn't want to compromise on the formulations and what went into the products
mm.
versus what was trending at that time. So while yes, it's a very competitive, beauty is trend led, there were some products that we just do not do. Like, for instance, we will never touch aerosols because
Mm.
it's just something that I wouldn't be able to apply on my skin because there's so much alcohol or like butane gas that, as a sensitive skin person, I would never be able to use. And just keeping clear to the brand ethos has helped guide us in the later years.
Fantastic. And can you recall any significant milestones or breakthroughs where you really felt, gosh, that this has been a turning point for us now as an organization?
Hmm. I think really it was, like we were chatting earlier, it was COVID that really sort of helped us pivot the company. We were predominantly wholesale driven before COVID. And
Ah,
because of COVID, our retailers did not order as much as they typically did. So we pivoted into D2C, direct to consumer. And yeah, from there we saw like a huge amount of website sales. And also, shortly thereafter in the UK, there was the introduction of TikTok and TikTok Shop, and it really propelled the brand into the hands of our consumers, our end consumers, which are sort of like the Gen Z, 18 to 25-year-olds, and that really helped propel the brand further. And while it was obviously a very scary time for most people, it was a really great moment in time, like looking back
yes.
how we were predominantly wholesale, and then the next year we were 60% D2C.
Wow. And where do you think now the percentage is sitting, D2C versus the wholesale?
Yeah, I think we're about 85 D2C and 15% wholesale. So
Amazing.
yeah, I do think that we, as a consumer brand, you eventually need to be omni-commerce so that, you hedge your bets. But at the moment, we see just a large amount of traction and um, just better margins with
Mm.
these.
It's interesting because if you had been continuing in the wholesale trajectory at that time, you possibly wouldn't have pushed at that time as much efforts into the D to C. Maybe it
Yeah,
would have eventually come, but obviously, as you said, you pivoted there, and it's actually propelled the organization.
yeah, no, I did. Yeah.
And what have been some of the toughest challenges along the journey, do you think?
I think the toughest challenges are actually the point of period where we are currently. So we are no longer a startup, but we are a scale up business. And I think that happens when you're post certain revenue hurdles,
Mm,
because as a business, I feel that we need quite a bit of change in terms of, the employees that we have, the team structure.
mm,
You suddenly need, instead of, when you're a startup period, you're looking for Swiss Army knives. So people who can help you
yes.
do everything. And, it's amazing culture, and, there's just a small group of you. But as you scale up, you suddenly need more expertise in very specific areas. So instead of Swiss Army knives, you need scalpels and people to be able to like guide the business through periods of growth and periods of downturns. And I would say, last year was really the first year that we were able to afford, like hits off. And it's been quite pivotal for the business. But at the same time, it's how do we still cultivate that culture of a startup, right? So
Yeah.
making sure that we're innovative and really having an underdog sort of mentality so that you constantly are challenging a very traditional industry. But also what's also challenging is scaling with the financial, so cash
Yeah.
requirements just become so much bigger as you grow. Like I mentioned, as a consumer brand, the more you grow, the more inventory you need. And what happens if the inventory doesn't move? And these sort of questions are one where it's helpful to get third-party advice sometimes from advisors. We hired one recently and they were able to secure funding for us from banks, which has been really helpful. So I think being open-minded and reaching out to certain people and being open and I think it's a very British mentality not to talk about money, but it's so critical when it comes to the growth of the business.
Yeah. And if you felt yourself personally, you've had to, as the CEO, founder, step back, let go, because can you still have the oversight over all of the functions and everything that's happening internally?
No, and actually it's been a blessing because you only have so many hours in the day.
Mm,
Um, and I would say that, trying to be part of the conversations or being sort of decision maker in everything is just a huge bottleneck, and you're just not enabling, the team to do what they need to do. So as much as possible, I try not to be a bottleneck. Obviously, I do encourage like weekly catch ups just so there's more one-to-one time on what's happening.
mm.
But yeah, I find that when I used to try and juggle everything out, I was the main bottleneck and culprit for any delays.
Yeah.
So
I think it's a common problem, because it's if everything's got to come back to one person for approval review, it's all landing on that person's plate. And you have touched on cash flow and funding and such. How have you been able to manage that sustainable growth of the business?
mm, we have never raised external equity funding and don't envision to, at least for the next year or so. And really, I've bootstrapped the business from day one. But in terms of cash flow management, I think being able to leverage or hiring a good financial controller is really key,
Mm,
because that, as much as you're driving revenue, you want to make sure, because we are bootstrapped, 100% bootstrapped, that the business continues to be profitable. And I would say that, yeah, just good financial control of the business is really, really key. But also, I think there are so many initiatives that you could take advantage of. For us, what really helps us is being able to leverage our relationships with suppliers so that
mm,
you have better payment terms. And I think it's a difficult conversation to have initially, but once you have it, you be so appreciative of that sort of conversation, because a lot of suppliers, because they want to have deeper, more meaningful relationships with you, and obviously they want to win business, they're able to give payment terms which is maybe 30 days post shipment, 60, 90, and that's enough time for you to recoup that revenue from your customers. So there's that. And then on our side, we use trade loans from banks, which is really helpful. Again, that helps with sort of periods of
mm,
seasonality. So for instance, for us, Q4 is a huge period of growth. They call it the golden quarter in retail, because that's where you see maybe some brands have like 50% of their revenue coming in Q4.
mm.
But that means you have to buy all your inventory 3 months before.
Yeah.
So leveraging on your suppliers and leveraging on trade loans from banks will help push you through those difficult periods that I personally found really helpful.
That's interesting. And you've mentioned bootstrapping and investment. Obviously, over the last, I'd say at least 5-10 years, we've seen a lot more culture around the investment industry and businesses going for investment and such. And it's almost glamorized a little bit. Do you have any thoughts on, that whole, should we say, investment sector? Because I can't help think that for some businesses, they start to get driven by, we're going for investment, which is a lot of time, energy, and effort, versus then they're taking their eye on the thing that they're trying to build.
Yeah, I 100% can relate to that because last year I was contemplating that because we turned 10 years old. And in the UK, a lot of the times venture capital funds will not be able to invest in you after that 10-year period. So that's why I contemplated it. And yeah, it's a huge amount of time you have to invest. Instead of running the business, you're preparing presentations or you're answering due diligence questions, financial forecasts, etc. So yeah, I think, it did take my eye off the ball. And in my industry, especially within beauty, you can get a lot of FOMO because there are so many brands out there that get that initial funding and suddenly you see their brand everywhere. They are posters, they launched into retail stores, etc. But at the end of the day, what really matters is, I suppose, your consumer take up. So you can be in lots of retailers and you can appear in lots of ads, but if the rate of sale isn't there, and then I suppose it's a blip. But in general, yes, there's a lot of feeling of FOMO because you too, you want to be that brand who was able to say, oh, I secured funding from XYZ fund. But I also know from personal experience when I was working in finance and in the startup that there is a culture of growth constantly. So a lot of times venture or PE funds, they have a 5-year horizon to make X percentage from the growth of the business. So it does not mean that it's sustainable growth all the time. And sometimes they measure growth in terms of revenue or even how many doors you're in, but it doesn't become profitable. So I think it's just having an open mind on how you see the future of the business. I'm constantly putting my ears to the ground on which brand has been taking off or which brands have filed for administration. And typically the brands that have filed for administration were chasing that growth.
Yeah. That's so interesting. It's great to get your perspective of that because I have heard many different stories and different routes that people and founders have gone through. So it's great to get your take on it. Something that has obviously worked really well for the beauty crop, it has been TikTok. When did you first start to see that you were really getting that brand visibility and engagement on TikTok?
Yeah, I would say we were one of the earliest adopters of TikTok and TikTok Shop here in the UK. I think we launched our shop in 2022, which sounds like just 3 years ago, but in TikTok world, that's eons.
Yes.
And it was great because actually it's one of my team members here who is, I think she was only 22 at that time, and she really took it on. TikTok is all about content. So content is king on TikTok. And, we were doing, instead of very beautifully manicured images on Instagram, she was creating videos where it's almost like jokes or trending sounds or trending dances. And it really resonated with the consumers that we had. And because of that and the sort of algorithm of TikTok, it helped us, help the brand predominantly do very well on TikTok Shop. So it's something that we're constantly learning, and the algorithm changes all the time, but you just have to be open-minded and just take it on board.
Yeah. And what things have surprised you about marketing and consumer behavior?
I think what has really surprised me about using TikTok is that there is really a sense of community and people really wanting realness rather than, back in the heyday of 2016, 2010, where it was Instagram and Pinterest, where it was perfectly laid out images, and even in the YouTube days where it was all about perfect lighting, perfect edits. People are looking for real content, and I would say not so much to be sold to anymore.
Mm,
And I think people appreciate when, let's say, even the content that we create with affiliates are genuine. So if for us the content that resonates the most is when an affiliate genuinely likes our products and is using the
mm.
products in a genuine context.
Yeah, this must feel worlds away from your finance investment banking days to be thinking of what you're now perhaps not, never mind just the product, but now what you and the team are doing on the likes of TikTok and other. I mean, I often say to Alex, what a world we actually live in for some
Oh,
of these, either whether it's content being created or tools that we're using, is pretty mind blowing, really.
it is. And you know what? Sometimes I don't talk about these things with some of my previous colleagues because they just don't, they just can't relate. It's just such a
Mm,
different world. A lot of times before I would feel quite ashamed or just not go on LinkedIn because, obviously my peers
yeah.
have in comparison, oh, they've gotten promoted, they're running XYZ, whereas, there's little old me, running my business in beauty, and it's just what worlds away from my previous life. But I wouldn't trade it for anything else because I was so miserable. I was
Mm,
absolutely hating life. And even though it's very difficult as a
yeah.
founder, as a sole founder especially, I wouldn't trade it.
Yeah. And the other
Mhm.
big thing you've had happen in the last 10 years is you have become a mother as part of this journey. So,
Yeah.
how has that changed your approach to entrepreneurship and leadership?
Yeah. So I would say the firstborn is the business. And I have my daughter now is 6, and I've actually got a 1.5 years old son now. And yeah, motherhood and the business sort of came hand in hand
Mm,
because I feel like I've always had to juggle the two of them, and I think being a mother actually helps you be a better leader because it just puts things into perspective.
mm,
Like for instance, if we were having a really bad day at work, I'm reminded all the time and being humbled by my children when I go home that there are just bigger things in life, and it's just that one day, and you have to turn the
yeah.
page, be ready for the next day of battle, in the office. But yeah, no, I think it helps put things in perspectives, and also I think in terms of being able to be a juggler is very helpful in terms of prioritizing what you do on a day-to-day basis. I'm in the office from 9 to 5, so I've got 8 hours to be really productive.
Mm,
And then I want to go home and I want to switch off. I might like log in back and check emails later in the evening, but yeah, like 8 hours is just solid focusing on what I need to do.
yeah. And I must say, even on the journey that I've had with my son so far, I see the things I say to him is advice I could be giving to myself. If he's in the playground and he's jumping on stuff and looking at other people getting distracted as he's about to jump off something, I say, just focus on yourself. Stop looking at what everybody else is doing, stay focused, look ahead. And I'm thinking we could all be taking these sorts of advice. So it's almost that we can also be learning from these little people as part of this business journey as well. Because like you said, when you get yourself stressed about something or whatever, how you perhaps talk to them on an evening when they're upset or stressed or something. It's kind of, we can be taking our own recommendations and thinking, yeah, it doesn't really matter.
It doesn't really matter at the end of the day. It just puts everything in perspective.
Absolutely. Do you have any tips or just how you do manage to have that balance or set boundaries between the business and family life?
Oh gosh, I guess it's a constant battle. But
See, here's me looking for the silver bullet, which I don't think any of us have. So,
if you find it, let me know, please. But what I do know is that it takes compromise and it takes a village to raise, kids. And I am very lucky to be able to afford the help. And both me and my husband have demanding jobs, and the truth is you just have to contingent for it. But also having like a network. So both myself and my husband, we're not from the UK, so we don't have families in the UK, but we have really great neighbors and a great network of neighborhood friends where, my daughter could go and hang out and play and have play dates. So it is helpful, but also being resourceful is really key, because some days you just have to be there for that soccer practice, for instance. So you just need to tell your team, you'll have to take this meeting without me, even though it's important, because you just have to prioritize what is the most important at that point in time. So it's leveraging your resources at home, but also leveraging your resources at work.
Yeah. Fantastic. Oh, thank you so much for sharing all that about your journey. I think you gave us some fantastic insights into, really, how you have gone about building this business and the realities also of what's involved in there. So I am going to now jump into asking you some questions from our really good conversations cards. But I will ask you a question because it's not on our cards, but it's a beauty related one. You mentioned trends before. What beauty trend would you banish forever?
Oh, yeah. Because I'm a child of the 80s and grew up in the early 90s, do you remember those over tweezing of brows?
Oh, yes.
Those need to be banished forever.
And what's a trend that you'd love to revive, that you'd love to see come back?
I love anything from the 70s and how playful people were with color and with their hair. There was just a lot of experimentation. I say bring that back.
Yeah.
Everyone's homogeneous now, I would say, just bring back experimentation.
Yes. Anyway, I will ask you some questions from our conversation pack. So, question number 1. Who has had the biggest influence on your life?
Oh, I would say my mother, 100%, because she was a working mother too. And she spent, 27 years working with one company, and she, started from sales rep to, leading a department. And she was effectively a single mother during my teenage years. So she helped, she funded me to go overseas for studying, and she's just amazing, being able to juggle four kids, having a full career, and going through a divorce. And she is amazing. Even till today, she just is able to juggle so much. So she's definitely, someone I look up to.
Oh, that's lovely. Question number 2. What was your dream job growing up?
Oh, I think what I wanted to be in my earliest memory was a fashion designer.
Ah, cool.
I I think because my mom used to collect all these Vogue magazines, when people were still buying magazines, and
Yeah.
she would have stacks and stacks of Vogue. And I just thought that was the epitome of elegance and style. And I was like, oh, I'd love to be a part of that world. But, it's so crazy that somehow years on that I'm sort of in that world, in
Yes,
that
it is
beauty.
connected.
Yeah, it's connected.
Absolutely. Well, we'll look out for when the fashion line is going to come out as part of it as well.
I think no, actually, no. Fashion is like even tougher than beauty. So,
And question number 3. What was there to do when you were a teenager? Because you grew up in Malaysia?
I did grow up in Malaysia, and I was sent to a boarding school at the formative years of 14 to 17. And as a teenager, I did lots of sports, which was great. So, yeah, I did everything from like long distance running to swimming. And yeah, I just remember doing lots of sport. And you know what's really funny? Because I have atopic eczema, I actually have asthma as well. As a kid, I didn't do a lot of sports, but then when you get puberty, you grow out of the asthma. I suddenly just went into sports, which was really interesting. So, no, I really enjoyed my teenage years.
Oh, brilliant. That's excellent. Thank you for answering them. And the last question that I like to ask all of our guests is, if you could ask any person, dead or alive, a question, who would it be and what would you ask them?
I think I would ask them what is their favorite memory, because everyone has their own perspective on what their favorite memory is. And it's also a great way to learn about who that person is.
Yes.
And build that connection with them.
And is there anyone who comes to mind that you would like to ask that question to?
Maybe someone I really look up to, like Oprah Winfrey, because she has all these. She reads so many books. Like, she's an avid reader, so I think she has a huge amount of perspective too. So.
That's brilliant. Oh, well, thank you so much for everything you've shared today. Really loved chatting to you. Where can people find out more about the Beauty Crop or yourself as well?
Yeah, so you can find us on our website, thebeautycrop.com, or we're on TikTok at The Beauty Crop, Instagram, socials. Yeah, and we live mostly on TikTok, so come and chat with us there.
Brilliant. I'll include all those links in the show notes as well. So, thank you again.
Thank you, Amy.
Thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed the episode. Be sure to check out the show notes for more information on today's guests. And if really good conversations are your thing, hit subscribe and join us next time for more business journeys, insights and banter.